Okay, I'm at a job site right now and I have a couple of drywall repairs. They've put a new pan for the shower in, and right here I've got to fill that area in and blend it into this outside corner and the bullnose on that tile. Then over on the other side of the shower, in order to slide the pan in, they had to remove a 4-inch strip of drywall. The baseboard will cover most of it, but not all of it, so I need to do a little taping, but it also has to be there to act as a filler, so when they put the baseboard on, it'll be nice and flat. Explaining what compounds I'm going to be using. Right here I have kind of an old bag of a setting compound, Easy Sand 20. This is a very fast setting. The 20 usually indicates approximately how long it's going to take to set up. A setting compound sets up chemically. In other words, I don't have to wait for it to air dry before I can put another coat on it. So that's why I like to use this for my repairs for the initial coat. Then it helps move the job along a lot quicker. And for my finished coats, I'm going to use a lightweight compound. This is the USG brand Plus 3, which is a real nice compound. It dries very quickly and it's very easy to sand as well. The tapes I'm going to use, I'm probably going to use a little bit of this mesh tape. This is a self-adhesive mesh tape. It's a little extra wide and it's also extra strong. That's what I really like about that. Another tape that I'm probably going to use here is the Fiberfuse tape. It's a fiberglass matte tape. It's very strong and quite thin. So I may use both, but we'll see which one I use. As far as the tools go, I've got a trowel, a 6-inch knife, and for mixing the setting compound, I'm going to use this pan. And I'm actually going to mix it up with a cordless drill with a mixing paddle. All right, first thing I'm going to do is measure the piece of drywall I need here. It's going to be 4 1/4 by 22 1/2. What I have here is a scrap piece of drywall that I'm just going to cut. I'm just using my tape measure and a utility knife. So I'm going to rip it 4 1/4. Just take I'm pinching the knife right along the edge. I'm going to slide it down. As I pull the knife, so there's my 4 1/4. Now I need 22 1/2. 22 1/2 up here. Now what's interesting about cutting drywall is you don't have to score it very deep. I just barely scored the paper, but if I just flip it over, I can just cut along the back and the two pieces separate. Same thing will happen here. I'm just going to lay it on the floor, give it a light tap. Check it out, see if it fits. It's not too bad. I'd like it to fit into that corner a little better, so I'm going to pop it back out. I need to remove a little bit of the upper corner of this because it's hitting some caulking and stuff. So I could just take my utility knife and just kind of cut that away. I don't need to get a saw or any big special tool out. Just taking the saw or the knife and cutting away some of the gypsum. Close-ups of the screw going in. I've already added some water to my pan. You always do that first. Now I'm going to sprinkle in some of the setting compound. The thing about the setting compound is you always add the water first and then mix it in. Get it a little thin at first and then keep adding to it. But when you mix this, once it sets up, you can't remix it, you can't reuse it. So I always try to mix close to the exact amount that I need right off the bat. In this case, I'm going to be doing a pretty good fill with this, so I don't want it too thin. I think I got lucky there. I added the right amount of water as well as the right amount of the setting compound, because that's a pretty good mix. Okay, so now I'm going to work out of this pan, but probably put some on my trowel as I'm working with. But I've got to get this area better prepared in order to put some of this compound in there. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to fill all this with joint compound. I'm not going to try to put a piece of drywall or anything in there. So what I'm going to do is remove any loose paint. And right here there's a corner bead that's pretty sharp edge and it's sticking out a little bit, so I'm just going to tap that in a little bit with my knife and then remove any loose material there. I'm going to fill this with compound and then put a piece of tape over the top of it, but I don't really want to get compound on this bull nose along the edge of this tile, so I'm just going to rip off some painter's tape and just stick it on there, because I do want to fill right to the edge, but I don't really want to get it all over the bull nose. Okay, so what I have here is a setting compound that I did mix up pretty thick. And the reason I want it thick, because I'm going to push it into that gap. I'm going to totally fill it with this setting compound. It's quite dry, as you can see. So I'm just going to take it on my taping knife and just push it into the gap. Now that doesn't look too bad already, but I do want to put some tape on there because otherwise that'll crack and show through later. So I don't need to go with a real heavy mesh tape or even a paper tape. What I'm going to use here is the fiberfuse tape that is the fiberglass mat. So that I'm just going to put over the top of the cracked area, push it right in. And it cuts very easily, so I'm just going to cut it with my utility knife, or my taping knife, I should say. And I'm going to just take some of that same compound and just coat right over the top of it right away. Once this sets up, which will be in just a few minutes, I'm going to coat this with some the lightweight compound, just to blend it in a little bit better. All right, over here on this repair, there's a little bit of a gap. I'm just going to pre-fill it a little bit. Once again, I'm using the setting compound that is mixed a little bit thick. Just pre-filling that gap. And over along the edge of this tub, I have a wider gap. I'm going to fill that as well. Just pushing that compound in with my knife. And then I'm going to use this fiberglass mesh tape to be centered. Just push it right into the corner. And I take my taping knife and I just hold it right in there and I pull on the tape, and that will just cut it right off. Now I still need another piece right along that edge to hold that gap. or to straighten that little gap there. I'm just going to cut a piece about 6 inches long or so. So now I'm just going to take a little bit more of the setting compound and just conceal it a little bit, just to start blending it in. Don't forget, baseboard is going to cover this later. So all I'm really having to do is, the upper part of this is going to be blended into the wall. Along the bottom, we're not worried because the baseboard is going to hide that later. Just smoothing it out, pretty thin layer. What I always like to do is keep this outer edge feathered in. See, I'm trying to blend this compound into this painted surface, so that edge right there, I've got nice and tight, blended in, so there's not a ridge. And then I also have only a thin amount of compound over the tape itself. And that's all I really need to do for right now. I'm just going to let this set for maybe 20 minutes and put the finished coat over the top of it. So it's still wet, but we can put another coat over it as opposed to the drying type compound that I'm going to be using on this coat. That we have to wait for it to dry before we can put more coats on it. So let's take a look at this spot over here. This was quite a thick, it's probably 3/4 of an inch thick, and you can see it's still wet, but it's definitely set up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a thin layer of compound over the top of this just to get it nice and smooth. So right now I'm applying the compound, putting a generous amount on. Now I'm going to take the 6-inch knife and I'm just going to smooth it out. Now I'm trying to leave a little compound, but really concentrating on it, keeping it thin and nice and smooth. And in order to do that, I take my taping knife and see how flat I'm keeping it against the surface? By keeping it flat, I'm able to smooth it, keeping it nice and tight. Clean off the excess compound from this side. And that's going to look good. All I'm really going to have to do is wait for this to dry and then lightly sand it. Maybe with a 220 grit sanding pad. But right now, I'm going to remove this tape. If you leave this tape on, it'll be very difficult to get off later. And tomorrow when that's dry, I can just give it a light sanding and be all done. Remove any chunks or any little ridges in the compound. That's looking good. I'm going to take some of the lightweight compound, put a nice layer right over the tape seam. And now I'm just going to smooth it out. The top edge, I'm getting it nice and tight. See how I don't have a thick edge there at all? And I'm going to do kind of similar on the bottom. I'm just going to smooth out the middle. Once again, when I'm trying to smooth out compound is when I keep my taping knife flat. And keep in mind, I'm going to be sanding this. It's going to dry. Probably in about 24 hours, I'm going to come in here and sand it. So I'm going to make sure that I have enough compound on here so that when I sand away the little tool marks and things that I have, it'll still be nice and flat. And I'm pretty happy with that. Really, pretty much once this is dry, just a quick sand and it'll be all set.